Hi, and thank you for coming back today. We are comparing the Bible and the Quran, and I think it's time to give a small introduction to both books. So let me start with the Bible, because this is the oldest book from both. And of course, we'll see that both books have a lot of similarities, because as we have heard, the Quran came to confirm the Bible. So there's no secret that both books are similar. Let's have a look at the Bible. First, yes, like the Quran, it's an Oriental book. It's written in Orient. But that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is to gather a few impressions, and I want to tell you what I found in that book. First, it's quite a big book. Actually, it's a library because it consists of 66 different books. And these books, some are very small, some are a little bit bigger, have been written in different times, in a time period of 1,400 years, on 3 continents, and by something like 35 different authors. Which means that we can expect a diversity of ideas and also a lot of contradiction between those books. I mean, suppose that musicians from different continents playing different styles of music come together and try to play together. I mean, that's going to be hard. Even when musicians play the same symphony, they need a director, they need a choir leader, they need somebody to help them being in tune. So how can people from different countries and different centuries make such an harmony as we find in the Bible? Yes, the Bible doesn't have contradictions. Some people say, yeah, the Bible contradicts itself. Many times when they say that, they have not read the Bible themselves. For example, there was a lady, she was a professor at a university, and she wanted to make herself famous by telling that Adam and Eve ate the apple in the Garden of Eden, but in the place where the Garden of Eden is, somewhere in the Gulf region, there are no apple trees. Now, if you read the Bible never speaks about the apples. It doesn't say which kind of fruit it was. So this is the kind of contradiction people advance to show that the Bible is ridiculous. But most of the contradiction we find can be explained if we look at the text closely. Even those who are real contradictions, as we have mentioned some of them in previous episodes, come from the fact that the Bible is not inspired word by word, but that the idea is important. And that's why 2 authors may have a different perspective and also different facts. But it doesn't mean that the Bible in general contradicts itself. On the contrary, the general picture and the general message of the Bible is consistent throughout the authors, no matter if they are kings like David or Solomon, or shepherds like Amos, or maybe a medical doctor like Luke, or a civil servant like Matthew, fishermen, and so on. So all these people write in the same direction. Some of the people argue that the Bible contradicts history, or if you want, history contradicts the Bible. And it's true that the Bible speaks about a lot of different civilizations, and some of them have not been known so far, or at least until the 18th, 19th century. Let's take the example of the Hittites. Many people ridiculize the Bible, saying the Bible speaks about the Hittites, a people nobody knew about. But about 150 years ago, a huge civilization has been discovered in Asia Minor, called the civilization of the Hittites. So the Bible is right. In the same way, some people mocked the book of Daniel because in chapter 5, somebody called Belshazzar wants to give a reward to somebody by giving him the 3rd place in the kingdom of Babylon. Why the 3rd place? Well, meanwhile, we have found the so-called Nabonid Chronicles. Nabonid was the emperor of Babylon after Nebuchadnezzar, but his chronicles, his books, explain that he had no interest in political leadership. And that's why he went to hunting and doing poetry and gave the rulership over his kingdom to Belshazzar. And that's why when Belshazzar needed help, he promised to someone who would help him the 3rd place in the kingdom, because he himself was number 2. So that's just a few examples to give you. What is also very interesting in the Bible is the Bible foretells the future. Some Muslims said that the Bible foretold the coming of Muhammad, and we have talked about this, but at least it talks about the future. That's what even Muslims acknowledge. Now, talking about the future of somebody coming is not too difficult because we can all talk about the future of somebody. But it's not just what the Bible says. The Bible speaks about the future of civilizations. It speaks a lot about the so-called signs of the times, which, by the way, we have in the Hadith, not in the Quran, but in the Muslim traditions. The signs of the times are precise signs before Jesus comes again, before the end of the time. The interesting thing is that what the Bible says about the end of the time, about the time of the second coming of Jesus, is completely different from everything that could have been foretold, let's say, 100 or 150 years ago. But that's exactly what happens today. We'll come back about this, so don't worry, that's a big thing. Let me give a very important point here, is the relationship between the Bible and science. The Bible is not a scientific book. The purpose of the Bible is not to give us some geographical or physical information. But as the Bible has some links with history, the same way the Bible has some links with science. That's obligatory. And I want to give you some examples how the Bible is very accurate and especially contradicts what people used to think in the time the Bible was written. For example, in Hebrews chapter 11, it is said that creation was made of invisible elements. So the material world is made of invisible elements. And we know today that the world is made of invisible atoms and even smaller parts of material. Science at that time was completely ignorant on the subject. Jeremiah, in Jeremiah 33 verse 22, speaks about an incalculable number of stars. We know today that we cannot count the stars, but a few years ago, people thought that we had only 1,100 stars in the sky. Paul in 1 Corinthians 15, in verse 41, said that each star is different. And that's something we know today. But in the ancient time, people used to think that all stars are the same. Job, and Job is interesting because this is the oldest book of the Bible. Job 38, verse 19 to 20, speaks about the light that is moving. And today we know that light is moving because it speaks of light years, the speed of the light in a second, and so on. In the ancient time, people thought that light is fixed in place. The same Job in chapter 26, verse 7, speaks about the earth that is free in the space. And today we know that through the gravity, but in the ancient time, people thought that the earth was sitting on a large animal, maybe on the back of an elephant, or on the back of a tortoise, swimming on a huge sea. That's what people were thinking in the ancient time. But now we know that the Bible is right because it contradicts what it said at that time, and we know that this is correct. Isaiah 40, verse 22, speaks about the earth as a sphere. And that's interesting because the Jews knew that long ago. And that's why, for example, Christopher Columbus, who was a Jew, decided to go to India from the western route because he thought that if the earth is round, we could go the other way around to India. At that time, people had no idea of that. In the time of Christopher Columbus, people thought the earth is a flat disk and not more. Again, the book of Job, in chapter 28, verse 25, says that air has weight. And I remember when I was a little boy, at school, we would weigh the air in a balloon. In the ancient time, people thought that air has no weight. It's weightless. The Bible says, yes, it does. Solomon, in the Ecclesiastes, chapter 1, verse 6, speaks about the wind that blows in cyclones. This is something we know today. But in antiquity, people thought that the wind always blows straight. 2 times the Bible speaks about the ocean floor that contains valleys and mountains. That's something we know today, but in the ancient time, people thought that the ocean floor was flat. In the same way, Job 38 verse 6 says that the ocean contains springs. People used to believe that the ocean was only fed by sources and rain. Today we know that there are sources in the ocean. By the way, that's something the Quran says as well. You want some more examples? Blood, according to Moses, is the source of life, the source of health. Today we know that. But you know that not long ago, maybe 100 years ago, people believed that if you are sick, we have to take away your blood out of your body. It's not long ago. We could a lot of things, but let me mention here a book by a French surgeon called Maurice Bucaille. Dr. Maurice Bucaille at some time was even the family physician of King Faisal in Saudi Arabia. And he wrote a book called La Bible, le Coran et la Science, the Bible, the Quran and Science, proving that the Quran is a scientific book and the Bible is not. This book had a huge subject. It was translated into 17 languages. And I don't want to talk too much about it, but some people have done. I'm quoting somebody called William Campbell. You can find a book that he wrote, The Quran and the Bible in the Light of History and Science, where he completely rebukes what Maurice Bucaille has said about the non-scientific content of the Bible. To conclude with, the Bible is the book that had a great impact on society. In many countries, revolutions were made in the name of the Bible, and there was no blood, like in England, for example. Well, that has not been the case. Revolution made in the name of atheism, communism, or other ideologies and religions. There was a lot of blood. On the contrary, when the Bible was spread in the time of the German Reformation, what happened? Criminality went down. Less alcoholism, less beggars, less domestic violence, better humans, better society. And I have to tell you, I must tell you, and I have the privilege to tell you, that the Bible changed my life. The Bible is the book where God can change your character, where He can change your heart, where He gives you a meaningful life. And that's why I think it's worth to read the Bible, and that explains the success of this book. So that's a short introduction. Next time I want to give you some help how to understand this book, how to read it in a way you can understand it and profit from the content of this book. Thank you very much for being with us. God bless you. And if you liked what I say, just put your like. And inshallah, see you next week.